What's going on, everyone? Hope you're all doing great. So, we've got something pretty interesting to talk about today because Lords of the Fallen just got a new update, patch 1.088, and it's been stirring quite a bit of discussion across the community. This one's not a massive overhaul like the big anniversary update that dropped a few days ago, but it's actually a really important patch because it focuses on smoothing out the aftermath of that big update. You know how it goes. When a game gets a major content push with new systems, new weapons, and major balancing changes, there's usually a round or two of smaller updates afterward that fix the things that slip through the cracks. That's exactly what this patch is about. Now, before we get into what's actually changed, let's just acknowledge something. Lords of the Fallen has come a long way since launch. If you were there on day one, you'll remember that the game had this mix of potential and frustration. It looked incredible, had that dark, gothic, Souls-like atmosphere nailed perfectly, but it was also plagued by performance issues, crashes, and uneven balancing that kept people from really loving it as much as they wanted to. Over time, though, Hexworks, the team behind the game, really started listening to feedback. They've been consistent with patches, updates, and new features that have gradually brought the game to a really solid state. And now, with the recent anniversary update, they've pushed it even further toward what they originally envisioned. So patch 1.088 comes right after that big anniversary update, and what makes it worth talking about is that it's clearly meant to clean up some of the rough edges that the anniversary patch introduced. That previous update was packed with features, like an all-new free weapon, Moon's Judgment, some massive improvements to magic and combat, the long-awaited pause functionality, better UI, and much smoother co-op play. It was the kind of patch that feels like a small expansion, not just a tune-up. But as players started to test all those features, a few issues popped up, mainly around stability, crashes, and online play inconsistencies. This new patch steps in as a much-needed stabilization phase, which is always something fans appreciate once the dust settles after a big content drop. If you've been playing co-op since the anniversary update, you probably noticed that connection stability wasn't always the best. Some players were reporting them disconnects mid-session or sudden lag spikes when summoning allies. That's one of the main things this patch is supposed to address. According to early reports and the brief patch summary from the devs, there's been a notable improvement in how co-op sessions run, with fewer drops and smoother synchronization between host and guest players. It's not perfect yet. Some people are still reporting occasional issues, but the improvement is definitely noticeable. And honestly, that's a big deal because co-op is such a central part of Lords of the Fallen's experience. The game's world is tough, its enemies hit hard, and being able to rely on a stable co-op partner changes everything, especially for players who prefer exploring or taking on bosses with someone else at their side. Performance-wise, patch 1.088 is also said to bring some subtle but important tweaks to overall stability and frame pacing. Nothing game-changing, but smoother frame rates and fewer crashes are always welcome. Some PC players have noticed that the game feels a little more consistent now, particularly in high-detail areas that used to cause sudden drops. Console players, especially on PS5, have reported fewer stutters as well. It's one of those visible improvements that don't sound flashy on paper, but make a big difference during long play sessions. Lords of the Fallen has always been a visually dense game, with heavy lighting effects, dense particle systems, and those detailed environments full of fog, fire, and glowing relics. And that kind of artistic ambition has always been a challenge to optimize. So seeing Hexworks continuing to tune the game's performance even 2 years after release shows a lot of dedication to keeping it alive and healthy. Now, the interesting thing about this patch is that it's being described as a hot fix, in a sense. But the fact that it got its own version number suggests that there are under-the-hood adjustments beyond just crash fixes. The devs haven't released a full list of granular changes yet, so we don't have exact details on balance adjustments or enemy tweaks. But based on community testing, there are a few things people are starting to notice. For example, some bosses that felt inconsistent after the anniversary update, like timing issues with attack windows or strange AI delays, seem to be behaving more predictably now. That might not be officially mentioned, but enough players have commented on it that it's likely one of those quiet fixes developers sometimes roll out without highlighting in the patch notes. Another subtle improvement players are talking about has to do with the game's new pause system. The anniversary update finally added the ability to pause the game, which was something fans had been requesting since launch. Before, like most Souls-like titles, you couldn't actually pause. If you needed to step away, you'd have to find a safe spot or just risk getting ambushed. Now that you can pause, it's much more convenient, but apparently there were some cases where pausing mid-animation or during specific scripted events caused minor bugs. After this new patch, those cases seem to have been fixed, or at least reduced. Again, small detail, but these quality of life refinements really make a difference in how enjoyable the game feels moment to moment. Let's also talk a bit about how this patch fits into the broader picture of Lords of the Fallen's second anniversary. It's pretty remarkable that Hexworks is still actively pushing meaningful updates this far after launch. A lot of games in this genre release get a few quick fixes and then move on, but this team keeps polishing their work. The anniversary patch alone brought an impressive number of community requested features, and this new one shows they're not just throwing new stuff in for the sake of it. They're refining and maintaining the foundation they've built. It's the kind of long term support that builds trust with players and keeps people coming back. If you stepped away from the game months ago, now might be the best time to revisit it because it's in one of its smoothest states since release. Something else worth mentioning is that players have been praising how responsive the development team has been on community platforms. They've been acknowledging issues quickly, confirming that fixes are in progress, and actually delivering those fixes within days instead of weeks. That kind of communication goes a long way in keeping the player base positive, especially in a genre known for its demanding gameplay and loyal fans. For a game that had such a rocky start, seeing it now running well with improved co-op, balanced gameplay, and regular content support is a big win for both the devs and the players. Now let's talk about the community response so far. Across Reddit, Steam discussions, and the official Discord, players are generally pleased with the way this patch performs. There are always a few outliers. Some people are still hitting occasional crashes or minor bugs, but compared to how things were right after the big anniversary update, the difference is night and day. One of the most common bits of feedback is that co-op finally feels reliable again. People can summon friends, complete boss fights, and actually finish sessions without getting disconnected every 10 minutes. That's huge, especially for people who love doing NG plus runs or helping new players through tough areas. It's also been really cool to see returning players commenting on how much the game has improved over time. If you look at some of the recent gameplay uploads or Twitch streams, there's this recurring theme where people are surprised at how smooth and polished the experience has become. And that's partly thanks to this kind of patch, small in scale, but vital in impact. It's the kind of maintenance that doesn't make headlines, but it's what keeps a game alive long after launch hype fades away. There's also been some speculation that this patch might be laying groundwork for future content. Hexworks hasn't announced anything officially beyond the anniversary update, but players are starting to notice hints of back-end adjustments, possibly preparing for upcoming seasonal or cosmetic additions. Nothing confirmed yet, of course, but it wouldn't be surprising if the stability update is setting the stage for another content push later in the year. The developers have hinted in interviews that they're not done expanding the world yet, and that ongoing performance patches are part of keeping the game ready for whatever comes next. So, to sum it all up, without actually wrapping it too tightly, patch 1.088 might not sound like a major update on the surface, but it's one of those patches that makes a real difference in how smooth and enjoyable the game feels to play. It's about making sure that all the great things introduced in the anniversary update actually function as intended. Whether it's improved co-op connections, fewer crashes, better performance, or little bug fixes that stop weird behavior during combat or pausing, everything points toward a more stable and refined experience. And that's exactly what this game needs right now, a solid foundation to build on as it moves into its third year. If you haven't booted up Lords of the Fallen in a while, this is genuinely a good moment to jump back in. The world feels more responsive, the gameplay's smoother, and there's a renewed sense of polish across the board. Plus, the community's active again. Co-op matchmaking times are shorter, and you'll find more people exploring the zones and tackling bosses together. It's just a good time to revisit it, especially if you were one of those players who loved the atmosphere and combat but got turned off by the technical hiccups early on. Those rough spots are finally fading away. At the end of the day, this patch represents the kind of steady progress that defines long-term success for games like this. Not every update needs flashy content or new weapons. Sometimes, the best patches are the ones that make the game quietly better in all the little ways that matter most to players. So hats off to Hexworks for continuing to refine their vision and to everyone who's stuck with the game through its highs and lows.